So Israel, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs published an information paper that was very detailed. I think it was 4 pages long. I have to go back and look, but they lay out very specific legal articulation for the justification for engaging in Operation Rising Lion. And the main point that they make there is there's been an ongoing armed conflict since at least October 7th, 2023, because Iran, and this is the point they make, right? So Iran has been behind their regional proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and various other kind of armed factions, and Iran controls them to a certain degree, funds them and equips them. And so Iran is essentially engaging in hostilities through their proxies. And they're also engaging in hostilities through kind of more means that aren't seen as well, like cyber operations or whatever. And periodically, they will end up launching rockets against Israel for various reasons, right? And so, it's this I think 4 pages of an information paper that lays out the explicit justification for Rising Lion. And if there was an ongoing armed conflict since October 7th, then I assume that the same legal reasoning applies for Roaring Lion. But the whole thing is an explanation about why there is an ongoing armed conflict. And so for somebody, and again, I'm using the example of Marco's blog post because I was talking about it this morning, so it came to mind. And I respect him immensely. But for somebody to just write one sentence and say there's no ongoing armed conflict, and then just pivot and just move on without either acknowledging that there is, Israel's entire legal justification is we've been in an armed conflict since October 7th, and we've been exercising our inherent right of self-defense ever since then, right? And so, not to pick on Marco's blog post, he's prolific and I respect him immensely, but that's the type of argument that I hear, not just Marco's, but then kind of bigger picture, is it's framed as, well, it's not self-defense. And so this is the United States, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not self-defense and there's no Security Council resolution and therefore it's unlawful. And that misses 2 points. So one is that Israel has determined whether we agree, it's a separate discussion that to be had about Israel says there's an ongoing armed conflict. Do we agree with that? Yes or no? Right. But that is the legal justification that was presented for Rising Lion, and presumably it still exists for Roaring Lion. And they say, listen, we exercised our inherent right of self-defense starting as early as October 7th, 2023. And we've continued that ever since then because we've been in an ongoing armed conflict since then. And so you may not see us firing, dropping bombs on Iran and then firing rockets at us every day. But we've been engaged in an armed conflict every day, an ongoing armed conflict since then. So if Israel is right about that, and they're right about the fact they're still exercising their inherent right of self-defense. The inherent right of self-defense is individual and collective. Okay. And that's in the UN Charter. So nothing in this charter shall inhibit the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense, or infringe, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So a legal basis that everybody dismisses is, well, it's not self-defense because the United States wasn't being attacked. Well, it's collective self-defense. And Israel was being attacked, and Israel acknowledges that it's been an armed conflict ever since October 7th. Again, we can have a separate discussion about whether we agree with that or not. But if we're going to take seriously a person's legal argument that this is unlawful, they need to acknowledge that Israel says it's been an ongoing armed conflict since October 7th, 2023. It says it's still using its inherent right of individual self-defense. There is an inherent right of collective self-defense that extends to, individual and collective under Article 51, or at least reflected in Article 51. So the argument that this is not self-defense misses the point. So that's one thing. The other thing to point out is that if this is an ongoing armed conflict and it was strictly between Israel and Iran, even if there was not a right to collective self-defense, the international law involving the resort to force involves initiating an armed conflict. Once an armed conflict is going on, let's say between Israel and Iran, according to Israel, and I think probably Iran, I'm not sure that they would disagree with this.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
we have been, like, from Iran's eyes, like, yeah, we've been engaged in armed conflict since at least October 7th, to be realistic about it anyways. But so that if that armed conflict has been going on, joining the armed conflict is a matter of neutrality.